right. So hi. Thanks for joining me. This is a little experiment. I'm going to read from my new book, Pain Woman Takes Your Keys. And thanks for watching if you're here. Um, the reason why I'm doing this, a couple different reasons. First, the book is about chronic pain, and a lot of people who want to go to readings can't because of accessibility issues. They're in pain or have limited mobility. So I'm just going to try to do this first, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the video and I'm going to put it into my author page, which allows me to add captioning. And then later I'll be doing a blog at Brevity that talks about how other authors can do this to make their work more accessible. So we'll see how that goes. Yay. Thank y'all for watching. I love you. I thought that I'm gonna read a longer essay that I don't usually read in my readings. Because y'all are hopefully in yoga pants and don't have bras on, so you can relax, so I won't feel as bad about taking your time. I'm going to read from the essay that's called The Lava Lamp of Pain. And I wanted to talk first about that essay. It was actually one of the first essays that started the collection. And what happened was I knew that Martha Bain and Zoe Zolbrod were editing the Sunday section of the Rumpus. And so I wrote, what I thought was kind of a strange essay on chronic pain, and I sent it to them. And they said, well, this doesn't really work for us, but they were generous enough to say for this and this and this reason. And so I did something that I always want to encourage other authors to do, which is that I emailed them back and said, would you take a look at another version? And they were generous enough to say yes. So lots of good things have come in my life from being rejected and then going back for a second chance. Thanks to many editors who've published these pieces. But this is The Lava Lamp of Pain. Pain moved into my body 5 years ago. It wasn't the whack of an anvil or the burn of a scraped knee. This pain sat warmly on the surface of my hands up to the elbows, like evil pink evening gloves, with a sort of swimming cap clenched on my head, with blue plastic flowers at the base of the neck and a nauseating blur in the eyes. At other times, the pain was a cold ache at the knuckles, with a frazzle in the stomach and a steady and oblong ache from hip to hip across the pelvis. It was a rigid, curled ache in the toes, like the talons of a predatory bird. How long it had been there? I had noticed driving home from my teaching job at a public university in a small Georgia town that my hands hurt when I gripped the steering wheel. I decided to try to grip things more lightly, but the achiness spread. Maybe it was stress, I reasoned. Life had exploded in the past few years, a divorce, then single motherhood, and a mysterious infection that turned out to be Hashimoto's thyroiditis, an autoimmune condition where the thyroid slowly erodes. As the wreckage began to settle, I seemed to be left with a glowing skeleton. I got up in the morning on a fall day, swung my legs out of the bed, and thought, oh, the skeleton did not like that. Lying in bed at night, I felt my skeleton pulsing. I shifted under the sheet and struggled to fold together my collection of bones. I was a silverware drawer in a mess, a tangled wind chime. I wedged extra pillows between my knees. Advil barely helped at all. It was stress. It was tension. I took a yoga class. I was getting old. But nobody gets old within 3 months. I was so angry at every limb, the way each joint refused to do my bidding. I didn't know then that I'd become a lava lamp of curling, invisible storm clouds, filled with a surge of mute motion that might be its own kind of fierce beauty. I waited a few months and I took more Advil. Maybe it was a bad flu or work stress. I still remember the moment sitting in my car when I realized things were seriously wrong. The pain broke through whatever container I had built for it. It was bigger. I remember taking out my cell phone and calling the doctor, saying I needed to talk to her about something. It was overcast. I drove to her office near the Chinese-Mexican buffet. She drew vials of blood and saw that there were weird things on my blood test. She sent me 2 blocks down the road to a nurse practitioner near the Big Lots, who prodded my joints and explained to me that my body was engaged in a new form of self-sabotage. I knew self-sabotage, but apparently this wasn't about apologizing too much or dating wily, unreliable men or trying to be perfect. This was actual physical erosion. I now had 2 autoimmune diseases. I was devouring myself. The joint pain apparently came from rheumatoid disease. My immune system saw my joints as the enemy for reasons no one really understands. She left after the physical exam so I could put on my clothes. I thought of my mother's aching, curling, swollen fingers and bouts of pain. I remembered my aunt's crippled, crumpled, twisted frame. I could have those bodies in the future, but the deformity threatening me in the future scared me less than the pain itself. This hooded cape that had descended, heavy like wet wool. I was 38. I had a 5-year-old son who liked to take a running start and catapult himself onto me, all soft limbs and flying hair and giggles, and nestle in and climb and wrestle. Instead of reaching out to embrace him, I found myself stiffening against contact and wincing. No, don't hurt Mommy. I was the bitchy patient, crying after each doctor's appointment, crying with fear when they told me they didn't know what next. I was desperate to be the mommy I'd been before. I wanted to claw my way back to the body I knew. Instead, I was a slave to the sky. I noticed that an impending storm could knock me flat. The barometric pressure shifts and the Georgia humidity echoed a pressure inside me. I could feel the swelling in each pocket of synovial fluid. I couldn't think or will myself through it. On one stormy day, I dropped off my son at daycare and called in sick. I canceled conversations and meetings with my students. Lying in bed, a day destroyed, I couldn't even do sickness the way I had enjoyed in the past. I couldn't read. The words swam in front of my eyes. I downloaded podcasts and flipped through them listlessly. The only ones that helped me were on Buddhism and the illusion of concrete experience. What you think is bad might not be bad. When you reject something, that rejection causes more pain than the negative experience itself. I was so whacked out with pain that everyday objects seemed to shine. Every moment I was grateful I was still breathing. I was grateful that I could fall asleep. I was grateful when the rain broke over my rental house, and in the cool air I could get up and move a little easier. Pain is a cloud, a mist. Pain is like the weather itself. Though the wind and the fronts are invisible, it can flatten a landscape. The nurse practitioner put me on a drug that was once used for chemo, strong enough to suppress my immune system. I wanted that. I wanted to do battle with myself, but the pain continued. For the pain, she gave me strong anti-inflammatories and steroids. I swallowed them gratefully at the kitchen counter each morning as I packed a lunch for my son. I felt the pain ebb, and I thought, take that. I stood up straighter and felt my skeleton quiet. After a few months, the strong white pills had messed with my liver and my guts. Lumps showed up in my inflamed liver, and red numbers showed up on worrisome blood tests. I'm told the damage will not be permanent, but the disease itself has the potential to attack my organs, my tendons, and other vital systems. I met a new friend named Tramadol, an opioid that I had always took as prescribed. I began to look forward to the times during the day when I could take my next dose. I still have a clear memory of opening up the pill case in my purse and seeing the little pointed ovals resting there like smiles. I'd scoop them out with a finger, swallow with a glass of water, and return for a few hours to the body I remembered. I had moments where my body could be loose. I chased my son, fell back on the couch in laughter, and I loved my quiet skeleton. The pain pills created an illusion. That pre-sickness body was dead, but I didn't know it. In place of that quiet physical body, I would have to adapt to a noisy one. A body with the city buzz of pain always in the background, a chatty, zinging body echoing with the sounds of 1,000-signal radio-buzzed jackhammer, snatches of an infomercial, baby crying, Vincent Price ghoulish laugh violin cymbals. This body sang with touches of a strange symphony and an alien melody. I strained to understand. Audre Lorde describes pain as visiting her, quote, bringing all of its kinfolk, and I understood, hosting the various prickly crowd. Quote, not that any one of them was overwhelming, but just that all in concert, or even in small repertory groups, they were excruciating. I agreed. The noise of pain, the surge of weather pain crept in, wearing a heavy cloak, even with Tramadol. I had to leave my son's chess tournament because the pain was about to make me throw up in a third-grade classroom among the piles of jackets and the chessboards. I lost days, lying in bed, trying to work, worrying about losing work, losing money, losing my ability to support myself and him. My nurse practitioner had given me a prescription for strong drugs to slow down and dampen my immune system. But I wanted the whole disease and its pain erased. I wanted the new neutron bombs I'd seen on upbeat drug commercials, where people with rheumatoid disease cavorted in sunlit meadows. I wanted every dangerous pharmaceutical those companies had to offer. I wanted back each day of my present life. I wanted my hours not to be soaked in this new substance, this jagged, strange, distracting heat. I needed more than a nurse practitioner, so I shopped for specialists and made appointments. I drove long distances to see them. Dr. A told me I just had very flexible joints. Dr. B told me I was a young, attractive professor who, quote, looked great, so I had nothing to worry about. He went to get a pamphlet, and I stood up and walked out, quivering with rage. A year into my pain adventure, I had not yet learned that the word pain is contained within patience. I was livid and panicked with the losses that had accrued. I started having problems walking. My left hip felt like it was grinding against itself. In desperation, I drove to the local pharmacy and stood in front of the racks of canes in the corner near the bedpans and boxes of gauze. I lifted up a cane decorated with gaudy purple and orange passion flowers. I set its rubber tip down on the ground with dread. I didn't want to be a slow, three-legged girl with metal tubing. I took a step and leaned my weight on the cane. Pressure eased. I could walk with a bit more balance. I leaned on the cane and walked up to the register. I paid for the cane and clomped with it out to the car. I flung it into the passenger seat and cried. The cane made my pain suddenly real to friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Some of them stood stock still as I approached. They stared, understanding something communicated by a length of metal tubing that all my words had failed to say. They asked how I was doing in grocery store parking lots or on a walkway near the English building. And I watched as their eyes squinted slightly in fear. The reptilian part of their brain hissed and said, "Danger, back away." Pain is the world's most dangerous criminal, death's sidekick. When the Grim Reaper shuffles in, what we fear most is not the shroud, but the sharp scythe he carries, the ouch before the silence. It's hard to confess pain because other people feel it or imagine it. Then they want to solve it. They will tell you the same solutions over and over. Have you tried yoga? I had an aunt. They are desperate for the answer to the unanswerable, just like me. Dr. C was a golden opportunity, a specialist at a fancy university medical center. He would cure me, I knew it. I got in my car in the Georgia heat and drove along 4 highways and across 1 state line. Maybe it was the distance that led me to hope that I was making a pilgrimage, that each mile might bring me closer to the relief and to the recovering body and the self I used to be. I imagined that maybe when I got there, I would nail my cane on a wall next to crutches in a grotto with a virgin statue weeping real tears. I went inside a sterile white room and recited my list of meds to the doctor. He was busy and important and had a resident with him who watched him in adoration. He cocked an eyebrow and said, "You're on a lot of pain pills." He implied that I was a med seeker, someone bluffing symptoms to get prescriptions for pain meds for fun or to feed an addiction. I stared at him open-mouthed. In a panic, I began to play meek because I had already learned that a doctor's story could block the way to help. Instead of too young or too attractive, I was now needy and addicted. My chest tightened, pulse racing. My voice shook as I told him I was only following the orders of another doctor. I wanted to tell him this was the only power I had left, to follow instructions from people who were supposed to know how to fix this. He told me there were vague indicators of the disease, but no screaming diagnosis that would lead to more serious treatment. Those serious treatments, it would turn out, were also not a cure, but at the time I wanted magic and remission. To know more, he would need an MRI. I nodded, glad to accumulate evidence. A phone call, however, confirmed that my insurance wouldn't cover the test, so the specialist sent me back to my regular doctor and wished me luck. I went outside and stood next to my car in the parking lot of the medical center in South Carolina, and I screamed and I swore. I screamed with a desperation that made my throat hoarse. I made a scene and screamed again with my wet face to the sky. I'd been in pain every day for a year, trying to make it as a single mom with a full-time job and no family in the area. I would not be fixed. I could not be healed. I'd been driven beyond the brink of fear into anger, which was easier. I was angry at the smug doctor. But anger and rage brought me back to panic. I screamed so loud in that parking lot that they heard me inside. Someone in that building called my doctor back in my hometown and reported me as a bad patient, a crazy patient, someone who couldn't play by the rules of decorum because I was making a scene in their parking lot with my grief and my rage over this pain I couldn't handle, the pain of my lost life. When I went home, the nurse practitioner began to treat me as though I were insane, as if I might snap with rage at any point, as if I didn't know the difference between a parking lot and a doctor's office, as if I had broken a rule. And I had broken several. I didn't know all the rules of pain yet, the rules of doctors and power and the military decorum and submission, but I would learn. I had nothing to do but go back to the pain, my constant companion. Unlike the doctors, the pain itself was reliable and might be learned. As I meditated or lay in bed, I watched the way it shifted and rolled along my limbs. I learned that often the weather report was wrong, and I was right. Pain creates its own knowledge. In 1802, a chemist named Luke Howard had developed a simple taxonomy for the types of clouds in the sky. The shifting shapes of clouds had amazed and baffled humankind, but no one before Howard had given them useful names. That's my dog. He had recorded how one weather event led into another and how to see the patterns. He called them cirrus, cumulus, stratus. He then broke them into subtypes that might be combined to create a complete vocabulary. He painted pictures of clouds in watercolor. Richard Hamblin writes in The Invention of Clouds, quote, "Every cloud is a small catastrophe, a world of vapor that dies before our eyes." I'm a container for shapes that won't last. I stare at my internal formations as Luke Howard looked obsessively upward, trying to see the logic in the swirls and surges. Dr. D, an osteopath, could do nothing new for my disease because, as she said, there was no cure. I liked her honesty. Instead, she prescribed a course of antibiotics and told me to get off the tramadol and the steroids. I balked. Weren't those white oblongs the only thing holding me together? No way, I said. She said to try a lower dosage. There were studies that the drug might increase sensitivity to pain. So I went off them, terrified for the wave of pain. Instead, my body felt almost exactly the same. I stepped into the naked world of pain on no pain pills. Later, I got back on them again when I needed a break, but I never take very much. It's hardly anything at all, and that's what using a pain pill feels like, a tiny sliver of the total pain removed. People without pain think there are pills for everything, but I have not found a pill that erases pain. Some shade it a bit duller, but if you're not treating the underlying condition, you're still stuck, lost in it, mired, caulked, frozen. It took roughly 5 years of pain for me to believe that the pain-free body had died. I need to understand that she is buried in photographs with my face, to understand that I am now living another incarnation of myself. I have mental tantrums about this. I've Kubler-Rossed myself into fits of no way, man, whipping around the stages of grief, bargaining and denying like a tilt-a-whirl, jimmying locks and praying and buying potions and placebos and optimism. I miss my former ability to think continuously. I want to wear a t-shirt that says, "Excuse my inability to process your spoken language. I won't be able to meet your cognitive expectations of me today." My son is a leaping 10-year-old now, though he's still a snuggler. I still have to say to him, "Watch it, Mommy's in pain today." And I hate that. I hate that some fold in his memory is tucked with the sight of me wincing as he runs toward me with joy. But he has learned that bodies contain mysteries, and that he might not know what another person is feeling even if they look fine. He's learning to be careful with bodies. I'm a different person in pain. Not worse, just different. If I were a pie chart, I'd maybe be 15% pain. The weirdest and most difficult thing I do each day is to try to not freak out about that. Instead of looking away, I have to study it, to know the way it creeps and shimmers. Sometimes it wants sugar in a movie. Sometimes it wants work and concentration as a distraction. Sometimes it wants touch, and sometimes it wants the skin never to be touched again. Pain is sometimes gray or turquoise. Sometimes it is shattered like lace or withered as an old tea bag. It is an anvil hat or a cross of crickets. It is a bodysuit of burrs dipped in gold paint. Pain has layers or levels like a house. When I'm roaming around its ground floors, I can function and still get stuff done. When I go up toward the attic, I am pinned to the now, the breathless present, the kind of heaven that Buddhists and mystics and kinks know. I wish I had a safe word, but I do not. I moved and got a job in Connecticut, hoping that the escape from southern humidity would free me. It turns out that I took my body with me, and the weather is here too. One day the August sky and the invisible cycle of disease sent shocks down my limbs and fogged my brain. I gave up on writing an essay and decided to just finish a short blog post about teaching. It seemed at best semi-coherent, but then it went viral. This raises the question of which woman is a better writer, me in pain or me without. The pain woman speaks in a pared down voice. She is a dreamy laser. You can't tell her a single thing. She has room for only one emergency. She has to creep slowly and hold onto the backs of chairs as she moves, but she has a strange superpower. She cares more about the vulnerable soft flesh of everyone than my normal, busy, pre-pain self. She aches in slow motion for everyone's crumbling life. She sees dead bodies wrapped in skin, sees the present moment as death in reverse. She's in a kind of ecstasy, not the way we understand the word as joy, but the older definition in Webster's dictionary, an emotional or religious frenzy or trance-like state, originally one involving a mystic sense of self-transcendence. And then there was a day, a quiet landmark on the couch, the first day that I realized I wasn't depressed because I was in pain. I realized my mood could separate from the bad news broadcast by my nerves. I was okay in here, in terrible pain, but alive and watching it. Pain explodes over and over. It's also super tiring. And then I need food and sleep. Later tonight I'll get depressed because I have lesson plans to do and I want to be more than this ecstatic, shattered, staring beast looking at the swirls. But for now I see swirls and I feel the weather in my bones. And I am two bodies, and one is the history of me, and the other is a lava lamp ghost girl with a new voice I have to listen to. No, more than listen to. She wants the keyboard, and she doesn't care about the life I had before she was born. Ta-da! Okay, so that's the essay, and if you have read the book, you might see that essay really contains the seeds of a lot of other essays that sort of grew out of it. So Yeah, the fact that Martha Bain and Zoe Zolberod allowed me to publish it and then get a lot of really good reader feedback convinced me that that I had something to continue exploring. So in a lot more of a way than my other books, this has felt like a really collaborative process with my readers. Um, let's see. So I guess like a regular in-person reading, if you have questions, I could answer questions. I don't know if that works, but I see your awesome comments and moi. Um, so yeah, if anybody has questions, whatever, you can post there. I'll also say, where's my little signs? I made little signs. Oh, look. Okay, so you can also, if you want the book, if you don't have it, you can get it for only $12 from the University of Nebraska Press website. And if you use this coupon code, that's how you get the sale price, 6AS17. So yeah, that's the sales pitch. Hiltz asked, how's the pain today? Hiltz knows because she's in pain. It's kind of medium. It's rainy. Question. How do you feel in this moment? Interpret however you like. I'm so happy that I have found other pain people, because I think the worst thing about pain and chronic illness and autoimmune stuff is being alone. And so, the communities of chronic pain people on Facebook and just on the internet in general, have really helped me to understand my own condition. So I'm just so happy that y'all are there. So that makes me feel really good. Okay, cool. Oh, Sarah asks, how do you deal with brain fog? Oh my gosh, I think this is one of the worst things. I feel like I'm less productive than I used to be, but more productive in a different way. Like I feel like brain fog and chronic pain have done the same thing to me um, as motherhood did. I feel like I have a lot less of a window to write stuff, so when I feel like I have energy and prime caffeine, I have to take advantage of it. And then when I can't think, I have to unplug in a much more aggressive way than I used to. Yeah. Let's see. Chris asks if I'm still writing pain essays and poetry. Uh, I'm starting to make notes on a few. Like I feel like I feel like I had exhausted every avenue, but I think that there might actually be more. So I might continue. And let's see, Melissa Bruno asks how my sense of empathy toward others with pain before writing this book compared to after. Empathy toward or how about empathy toward myself? Um, golly, I needed this book in order to find empathy for myself. I was brutal toward myself at the first year, a lot of the book explores my, just how harsh I was about having lost my ability to work as hard as I used to, and really judging myself for that. So I needed to document and then to read other people's stories and feel the empathy for them before I could then turn it back and feel like, okay, I'm one among this group. We're very similar in a lot of ways. Therefore, I have to have empathy toward myself. So, and I really needed to also read other people's stories first to understand how to make that empathy. That's still a work in progress. I feel like I fall into the trap of needing to judge myself by my production, which is garbage, but I still fall into it. Let's see. Kathleen asks, besides writing about it, how did you express what was going on with people who've known forever? Oh, this is really hard because, everybody who's in pain probably knows as soon as you confess to someone, oh, I'm in pain, then, um, I'm codependent with the universe. So if I say I'm in pain and someone else goes, ah, in empathy, then I feel like I've made them feel bad, and then I feel worse. So I'm really one of my things that I've had to do is to tell people when I'm in pain, especially close family members, so they don't think that I'm just being bitchy, or mean to them. You know, I've just had to really communicate. I have a really hard time still doing that with people at work. And I still tend to feel like I have to overcompensate by working extra hard because I'm scared of, in some nightmare version of my life, losing a job and losing health insurance. So all these fears that we have, I think, as a result of having a shitty safety net, um, they influence my ability to communicate and be honest. But that's a work in progress. How do you find so many interesting ways to describe pain? I find I use the same phrases. I am. I'm actually doing a workshop in Pittsburgh for creative nonfiction at on this topic. So that's coming up in August on the whole metaphoring thing. But I already did. I did one workshop already, and I'm gonna soon be posting some writing prompts on my website about like trying to find weird metaphors. I think for me, like my senses are they tend to be very visual, so I just sort of would lay back and like let visual images come. But I think whatever is your strongest sense, you have to just like almost not try. Like I would do it not while I was writing, but while I was just laying there watching the pain, if that makes sense. So the research for me was not writing first, but just like letting it happen and seeing it and then trying to write later, if that makes sense. Aw, you guys are so nice. Thank you. All right. Well, I guess I will end this and thank you. I love to all of you who are watching, and I will post this soon with captions. So thank you very much for being part of this experiment, and love to all of you. Mwah. Bye.